Okay, I think we're probably just about there. So welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed the film. I'll just start by introducing Carolyn, and then she'll talk a little bit about the project, and then we'll just jump right into Q&A. We've got a half hour, so folks can just type questions into the Q&A box like we've been doing, and I will read those. Okay, so Carolyn Kallenborn is a professor in design studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Each year, she spends time in the central valleys of Oaxaca, where the rich exchange of ideas and culture with the artists and craftsmen provides a constant inspiration for her own artistic endeavors. In addition to projects and shows in the US and Canada, Kallenborn has had solo exhibitions across the United States and in Hong Kong, China, and Oaxaca, Mexico. She is the creator and producer of 2 documentary films, Woven Lives about Oaxaca weavers and La Vida y los Muertos, Day of the Dead in Oaxaca. Mm-hmm. So Carolyn, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
If you'd like, so we've seen 2 episodes of Textile Talk. If you want to just start out by talking maybe a little bit about the collection, about kind of the inspiration, where you hope things are going, what the scope is, whatever you'd like to start out.
Yeah. So actually, I was really excited to finally do this project. As I say in the film, I was a student there at UW-Madison, and I would go into the collection with my teachers, Bev Gordon among them, and Henry Druell among them, who would tell these amazing stories. And, the way they would, talk about everything in there, it would open my eyes. It wasn't just like, oh, we learned about a textile, but I felt like we really kind of learned about different ways about looking at life and thinking about things. And I always wished like everybody could hear that. And so and then I'd been doing some filmmaking. So I made actually it was the same motivation that I made Woven Lives, is I spent a lot of time in Oaxaca, and I would talk to all these people, and I would just think, I wish everybody could hear this, what they're saying, and hear these stories and see what they do. And so it was that same motivation for this, of just really wishing there was a way. And about, I don't know how many, 4 years ago, maybe, we moved to a new building like 6 years ago. And when we moved, our building was remodeled. And while it was remodeled, the whole collection, 13,000 pieces, all had to get rehoused, packed, and put off campus, and then brought back in again. And as it got brought back in, there was a lot of volunteers and a big crew putting the whole thing back into this new, beautiful facilities that you saw in the film. And, just going through those again and looking at it and realizing kind of what a treasure this was, that I just really wanted, and then people thinking like about people like Beverly, who was going to retire, and Diane Sheehan, who was going to retire, and other people. I was like, man, we got to get them in here and just get them talking about this before they go. So I had the chance. I won an arts award a couple years ago, and it was enough money to I was like, I'm going to make these films that I've been wanting to do all the time. So that's what made me do it. And I was happy to catch Bev before she moved away from Madison, and Henry retired like right after I did his recording. And so I'm trying to get people while they're there and still have the passion to tell those stories. And it's just this tiny drop. There's so many pieces there that have, I guess this is like telling you all who all are studying textiles, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, so I don't have to tell you. But and we have this great new facilities now too. So we have a new a textile gallery that's just for textiles from our collection. So we always have a show out now, and that's new. That just opened a year and a half ago, I think. So we're kind of at an interesting spot. So I'm very excited to be like sharing all of this with everybody. So.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Susan. She says, the mullahs are beautiful. They remind me of Keith Haring's style. Any evidence he was influenced by them that you know of?
I was going to say, Beverly is here in the audience. My guess is, if anything, it's the other way around, because these were around long before Keith Haring. So I don't know. Should we pull Bev in and have her ask this question, answer the question?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
the question is, was he influenced by them?
Oh, I was thinking
Right.
that was kind of the wrong way. That I don't know, but it certainly has that kind. It certainly has that kind of that playful feeling about it for sure. So.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring Beverly
Yeah,
up?
let's bring Bev in too, because she's here. So like content-wise about the MOLA specifically, Bev's going to be able to, she's got a lot more background in that than I do. So
Yeah.
hi, Bev.
I have no idea about the answer to your specific question about Keith Haring. I mean, it's possible, but the odds are not necessarily very large, I don't think. It's just, when you get into a kind of playful approach to things, it may wind up looking similar, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are there other questions from people? Or?
I'm waiting for some more. If folks would like to ask anything else, there's also I'm sorry, will you say again how to pronounce the Yoruba?
The Yoruba pieces? Yeah, the Agungun. The Agungun ensembles is what Henry refers to them as, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's from the Yoruba, and Henry was very specific about the maps. So we made these maps and we did a lot of checking, to make sure they're accurate. And so the Yoruba are mostly in Nigeria, but they're a little bit over in Benin as well. But not all of the Yoruba all have the Agungun tradition, just some do. So on the map, there's like a couple of layers as there's sort of the political boundaries of the place where the Yoruba are. And then there's a smaller area where they actually do the Agungun tradition. But you'll see like vestiges of this in all kinds of places, like in the Caribbean, they have a pitchy patch, and I've seen in Mexico, I've seen ones that are very much the same thing with these long strips, and they spin around in a really similar way. And in Brazil, but there's a lot of Yoruba influence through all of those areas as well.
Okay, we have another question. They say, I'd love to hear the voices of the people whose art was shown. Were any Black, Indigenous, or people of color artists or curators reached out to about this project?
Well, on this particular one, we were looking to have, it was kind of inviting the people in that have been studying these, and like Beverly, who's been looking at them for a long time. It was, I wouldn't say I didn't try, but there wasn't these are short little films, but that would be something that would be for another one, and have a different topic and have a different person that can come in and talk to. I certainly have people of color and Native American people that I very much want to do other episodes with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that too, if there were folks who, kind of are advising, I mean, I guess less in terms of maybe your film specifically, but in terms of like the collection and the, the curators and the collectors, like maybe you can talk more about the connections with the community that the object.
Yeah, and well, we have Dakota Mace, who is one of the she's working at the Textile collection over the last, I think, a couple of years. She's one of our graduates and works in the collection. And she and Kendra Greendeer just curated a really great exhibition on Native American textiles. And Bev, do you remember the name of it? And I forget names of things. I have to write things down. Do you remember? Marina might know. She's in the audience. She would remember what it was. And actually, we've been doing a lot on making sure we're getting voices of various people in there. And as a university, we are, historically, Wisconsin's pretty white, and so that is kind of what our history is, but it's not where we're headed, and it's certainly not what we're aspiring to do. So, yeah.
There's actually
and I actually part of what I put on the film on the very end, there's a little thing that says, if you have anything you would like to add about this. That was actually one of the things I was hoping would happen here, is if there's people here that have connections that, that could add a deeper conversation to that, I would be super interested in talking to somebody about that. So,
yeah, this is, I mean, another question that's sort of related is, I didn't hear in the film how or why the families gave up these important treasures to the collector. Do you have stories about that?
Well, there is Henry has been working with and that one's the one I can talk to specifically. Bev, you might be able to know more, like, how yours were purchased and other ones came in. But Henry has been working with the Yoruba very closely for since the 60s. And he knows, these are like families from families. That, he's connected to them. And when they came into the collection, they actually had people come in and they did ceremonies to sort of accept the spirits, and to invite them in and make sure that they wanted to be in this space. So it was a pretty thoughtful presentation and very respectful to where these come from. And Henry works with all kinds of people from Nigeria all the time. He collaborates and he brings people in constantly, both here and to museums all over. Yeah, Marina writes, Dakota and Kendra's exhibit was called, is that on here?
Yeah, here, I can make
Intersections. And there's thank you. And there's an online version right now at CDMC, which is the Center for Design and Material Culture.
It looks like she put the link to that in the chat too, so people can access that if they want.
Yeah, and it was really a just great exhibition, and it was really well received, and it's gotten a lot of kudos for having done a really thoughtful exhibition. So both Kendra and Kendra Green Deer and Dakota's Navajo. Her family's not a weaving family, but they're a silversmith family. But she's also studying weaving, or she was studying weaving, and she and Kendra, who just had a baby last week, curated the show. Yeah.
Another question about contemporary artists. Do you know if Nick Cave was influenced by these ensembles?
If you see the ensembles, you can be sure that Nick Cave had looked at those and quite a few others around too. And I've heard Nick talk about these as well. And he actually was in Madison as a visiting artist back when I was a student, and that was pretty cool. So and he knew Henry and Sonia Clark. He and Sonia Clark and Henry, and there's a whole group of people that were very very influential, for me as a student being around, and so that idea of that. The embodiment and becoming this other person, it's so much in line with Nick's work. It's just amazing. So,
Great. Okay, here's someone who I think is interested about your other work. It says, this is completely off topic, but in your work in Oaxaca, did you ever hear stories about the ancient cosmological origins of cochineal from the Zapotec or others?
Of a cosmological origin of what?
The ancient cosmological origins of cochineal from the Zapotec or others.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard cosmological ones, but I certainly like the stories about cochineal. There's a lot of them. I know and my blind mind's kind of like the guy that has the cochineal farm out in San Bartolo and out in Coyotepec, and who has the far, and he's got all kinds of stories out there, but I don't know that I've heard people talk about maybe somebody could share that if they know it. I haven't heard that particular one, although I'm in the middle of a lot of discussions about things like that, but there's different stories around by different people. So. Okay.
Kevin Cosbab asks, what is the plan or schedule for releasing Textiles Talks videos? Is it going to be a semi-regular thing or an ongoing series?
I'm hoping to make at least about, I don't know, somewhere around 8. And the plan is to put these on as open source, because one of the things that I looked at when I was thinking about these things, there's it's on Facebook, and I think it's PBS. It's Origins of Everything. It's these little short stories, and they're 10 minutes long, or maybe 12, and they tell these very interesting, complex stories about history, and it's like this short little nugget that you just go, I never thought about that. So that's that it's free and they get passed around, and I'm just really interested in thinking of ways that can help people see, or how we might see the world a little bit differently, or understand those things that we see on a regular basis and have a better understanding of them. So the idea would be to put these on as open source, and it'll happen through the Center of Design and Material Culture. And I have a Vimeo site too. And people can go on there and look at them. And the idea is to put them on. I'll probably get about 2 more out yet within the next academic year, and then we'll see what happens from there. I'm going to have to look for some funding because I about used up my award money, so I got to find some outside funding for it. So,
and these. So this is this the first time that you've shown these episodes so far?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the first. They're hot off the press.
That's great.
Yeah. And that's what I really was thinking, like, this is a good place to do it, because there might be someone else, there might be people here too that have some other thoughts about some of these, and they'd be certainly open to that.
Just to answer I'm not sure if this is a question that I can answer or you can answer. Someone said, I tried but was not able to join digitally for the film. Is it available somewhere else? I want to start off by saying, so all of the films that are part of the TSA Symposium right now, those are going to stay up on those pages. So if you got here a little late, or you're going to miss one of the ones from another night, but you'd like to see it, you can watch those on your own time, like within the span of the symposium. But yeah, Carolyn, is it possible?
Yeah, actually, so with COVID, I have a few films, I have a couple of films that I made, and when COVID started, I put all of my films on Vimeo, and they're all open source, so anybody can watch them. And so Woven Lives is on there, and I have it in Spanish and English because I live bilingually a lot, and it's very difficult if you're in one and not the other. So I made the film equally accessible in either language. You can do subtitles or Spanish language, or you can do either in English or Spanish audio, and English or Spanish subtitles, either one. And then La Vida y los Muertos, which is a Day of the Dead, is also on there, and it's also bilingual. And then the Textiles talk will be on there too, and they're all open source, and anybody can watch them. And like, I made them because I want, there's good stories for people to hear about, and that's why these are out there. It's so I'm happy for people to share them in their classes or with people. So if you go to my Vimeo site, you can get to any of these. And that's where this is streaming off of what we looked at tonight. Mm-hmm.
So is it Textiles Talk? Is that what someone would
search? Yeah, Textiles Talk, yeah. And if you want, I can put links to all of the Vimeo, and we can list it. If you have a place where there's some bulletin board or something, we could list it so that they could see those. Yeah. Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah, it would be great to be able to, just have them someplace to click.
Yeah.
Okay, Susie Click says, congratulations, that was fantastic. I love Mola's, Beverly Gordon. Her book is my favorite textiles book, and those Yoruba videos were amazing. I love that you've spent so much time in Oaxaca. Have you done anything on, I'm going to not get this word right, Tehuantepec?
Tehuantepec. I've never been there, but there's a huge influence. I'm often in the city in the Central Valleys, and I'm there a lot, and there's a lot of Tehuantepec, the style of things comes in there, like the huipiles that you see that look kind of like Frida Kahlo type things. Those all come from that area. And I know people from there, and I know the work really well, and you see it around all over the place. But I think I went through there on a bus once, which is really funny, but I go to the Central Valleys, and then there's a lot of people come in there, and I spend a lot of time. It's just like this endless place of discovery. So I don't often get many other places. So down in Chiapas a few times too, but to have one amazing, it's all the textile traditions are so alive down there. There's so many people doing so many different types of things, and it's just part of how they live and breathe every day. It's really amazing. Like, as a textile person, to just be in a whole culture that is just embraces textiles and everything, and it's part of their identity, and you know exactly what town somebody's from just by the blusa they have on. So
Great. Since Beverly's here, maybe I can ask a
Yeah.
question sort of for both of you too. Maybe can you guys both talk a little bit about how did you choose the pieces to show, or just a little bit about working together on this?
Well, in terms of the molas, the textile collection doesn't have an endless supply, and we were highlighting things from the collection. So it started with that. Although there is a new donation that we borrowed some from that will become part of them. And then, so we were working with what was on hand. It wasn't necessarily like selecting the very best of anything. And I brought in some that I had. And so we built the story with what was there. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's true, Carolyn? Or?
Yeah. And for me, like Bev, as we know, she knows about so many textiles from so many places, and there could have been, how many different stories you could have told from there. I don't even know. So I asked her, what's your favorite story to tell? And she's like, I want to talk about the molas, and that's where I think things get really good. It's like, what is the thing you're most passionate about? And then you go for it. And so she pulled it, and I love it. I love watching you in the film, Bev, because you're just like so excited, and you appreciate like this, the work it takes to do that, and the artistry, and the what it takes to be able to get that expressiveness into that cloth. So it was so much fun. Just so much fun to film because you're like all excited about everything.
But one thing I know Carolyn has said to me, and it's really true, like watching Henry's presentation is very different in feeling from mine, because it's more like a lecture, because he's so good at it and he knows it so well. And Carolyn has said she wants each presenter to do it in their style, because the whole point of these little videos or films, whatever they're technically called now, are that you are like stepping into, you're being there with a teacher or with somebody who's sharing it, so that their personality, in a sense, or that their approach, better put, their approach, their way of relating to them becomes communicated. So it was really meant as a teaching tool. I know Carolyn talked to me about this years ago, of what's it like to just hear about these things from somebody who cares about them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think part of this is like, I really like that every person brings different questions and in different perspectives, that it's not just, we don't understand things just by one perspective. You understand it by being a maker or by being a scholar. And like Precious Lavelle in a session I was in right before this was talking about how there's many ways of understanding things, and academics understand in a certain way. And there's a whole lot of other things that are not academic that are just equally important, fascinating ways to understand. And I think that having different people come in, and each person having, this is only two, but each person that comes in brings in their own reason why they're interested about this. And like for me personally, what drew me into this wasn't my academic learning. It was my mom sewing for me when I was a kid. And to me, that's as legitimate as the fact of whatever degree I've got. And so I think that if each person, as they come in and interact with these, like, what is it that, really, what pulls Beverly to this, and what pulls Henry to this, and what pulls someone else to this? And it's going to be different for each person. And I think that's a way of understanding the world is, it's like the blind men and the elephant, the 5 blind men and the elephant, and everybody's seeing it from their own way. And the more you get different people to approach it, the better understanding we have about things.
Yeah. There's another, I guess, a comment about the Yoruba pieces. Karen says, I've attended a Baba Igun ceremony in Brazil. I think it's important to have more contextualization about how the Baba's dress fits into the culture.
Mm-hmm. That would be something, and I don't know about Brazil. I could ask Henry about this, and he would if he were here, that probably would have been a good thing if we had Henry here too, because he probably could address that, but I don't know what it is. But it's something I can look into it, and I would ask Henry about that as well. And sometimes and I'm guessing here, I don't know, sometimes there's something that happens slightly different in one area than it does in another. And there's something very specific. I know that enough from Oaxaca. It's that, you know, people be, oh, like Day of the Dead, this is how you do it. And it's like, you go to another town a half hour over and they do it really quite different, but the underlying is often the same. So I can't say to those particular specifics, but it would be something if you want to write to me about it or shoot me in a direction, I'd be happy to take a look.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, because that just makes me think about too, like it was so interesting in that part of the film to see both like the costume sort of on, you know, kind of like the white table in the collections room, and then also the videos where you're seeing it in action and sort of like context that way. And is that something that like, were you able to, you know, if you know sort of the provenance of the object and, you know, then you also have these videos, was that something that you were able to match? Or, you know, because I guess it seems like there are probably a lot of like sort of subtleties of regional difference and kind of the context of the really specific place that it's from.
So all of the videos were from Henry that Henry has taken over the years. So they were all his work. Now, I don't know, you know, there's a couple times in the film even where we cut where we're actually talking about one and then we move to the other, but it was more like, because that's where the conversation fit. So there's a few, so it's not like strictly that one is completely, every comment made during that first half is about the first one and the second one is all about the one that's fancier. And that was from, you know, filmmaking kinds of things that happened in the, you know, in the way that the conversation, because that was like a 45-minute lecture and we had to cut it down to 12. And Bev, yours too was like 45 minutes and we cut it down to about 12 minutes. So there's some, you know, you can't always get every single detail in it. I do know that we checked everything with Henry several times and Bev too, that you know, is everything lined up? And I know, like, for me, if you were talking about Tehuantepec and you stuck something in there from Chiapas, it would, like, make me do this. And I'm quite sure Henry, that if there was something really off, he would have caught it. But it's not like he was sitting in the editing room saying, oh, this thing goes with that. So, but they should be at least generally accurate. But I'm regretting that we should have invited Henry to be on here too. Mm-hmm.
You might tell people what the other one you have not quite finished, but you have taped or filmed.
Yeah, so I'm working on this one, and that's one I actually want to be a little bit. That one's I feel like I want some extra outside in on it because it's about the story of like Chintz and how it came from India and brought in, and it's with Pat Mansfield, who was one of the professors at UW, and she was another one. What's the story? You know, I asked her what was the story you wanted to tell, and she wanted to tell this story about Chintz. And there's a lot, and you know, a lot has changed over how we talk about things in the last 20, 30 years, and she's been retired for a while. So I want to be, how we might talk about the trade might be a little different than we were 20 years ago. So I was like, no, that one's not ready to go out yet. So I'm going to work on it, but it is something that I want to make sure that, like how it, the story, the interesting thing to me is this sort of back and forth. And like, again, in the session before this, we were talking about the batiks that were happening, and they were between Ghana and Indonesia and the Netherlands. And it wasn't just a one way, that it's this collaborative thing that's happening and how one area is influencing another. And so how the textiles have been a really amazing way of design interaction and inventing new things when two cultures come together. And it can be both really great things happen and really awful things happen, kind of like COVID, you know? So it's like, so you kind of got to look through there and see which things are good and which things came out that were good and which are bad. But so that story's just got a few more little bumps that I like, oh, you got to, you know, watch how that gets presented. So, yeah.
But I did think it was worth mentioning because the vision for these textile talks is a really wide range of types of subjects. So the two you saw tonight were more ethnic and, for lack of a better word, in scope, but there are there's contemporary artists, there's all kinds of things. We know textiles is the whole world, and there's no limit here. And the collection, since this was to feature this collection, it does have a great breadth to draw upon.
Yeah. And there's a number of, like, there's like this opera quilt thing that's actually been part of an exhibition, like a traveling exhibition that's got this, the provenance is really like what they thought it was. When you look into it, it was really something else. And that's like something from northern Wisconsin. And it's sort of the same kind of questions, like, why were they making this? Regardless of who these makers are, we're kind of approaching the idea is to approach this through the same storytelling and kind of material culture of looking at things. And then there was some and actually in the both in the trailer and in my own part that I talk about, I purposely mixed up, like, it doesn't, my own stuff and my history of making with the history of, people I work with in Oaxaca, with the history of people that I don't know, with people from Western culture, non-Western culture, from pretty much every continent, and different time periods from this continent and different time periods from that continent, because there's some parts of this that are kind of do happen all over the world. So, and there was one I actually wanted to include. We had some old ancient Peruvian pieces, and it was one I really wanted to include some of those. And I was talking to Dakota about it, and she was like, she wasn't sure that these might have been burial pieces, and that might not be respectful to be showing them in an environment, and that more respectful is they're not thing. And so I didn't include those particularly because of that. So, so there's a lot of stories, but there's twists and turns in all of it. So.
All right, so we're just a little bit over time. Do you want to answer one more quick one about the collection?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so about how many people get to visit the collection in person on an annual basis? And do
this year?
what's sort of the normal circumstance?
For a while, it was for a long time, we did not have very good exposure at all. Like it was kind of tucked up in a room upstairs, and we had a gallery where maybe every few years we could pull out a show, and it was kind of a lot to do. And then it got put away in storage for 3 years, and then it took another year to get it back. So it's really only been about 4 years that we have really great facilities for it, and we have this new building. And then just in the last year and a half, I think it was, that we have a textile gallery that just shows textiles from the collection. And we've had a lot of different really great exhibitions there. So, but I don't know what the total numbers are, but now that we have, Marina says she doesn't have the numbers on hand, but it's definitely expanding. We have a lot of classroom visits, both on campus, and it says here to access the missing voices in your research for your film. So there's a lot of people that can come in and see it, and we're getting a more and more online presence, as everyone is. And some of the exhibitions are going online, and we have a new Center for Design and Material Culture that has we were just right before COVID, we were all going, this is what we always imagined and dreamed that we could do. We were having events, and we were having wonderful, we had a show on African textiles one summer, and there was this whole group of visiting scholars from Africa. There were, I think, about 50 people from all over the whole continent that were coming to study at Madison for 6 weeks. And they were all it was some very competitive, and they all decided they wanted to have their event there in that space because of that textile exhibition and in our building. And it was beautiful. And the interaction between and I had a friend visiting from Mexico at the same time. And so it was like this big international thing, like in the hallway of where I work. It was awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Carolyn. I hope that people will get to come visit soon. Fingers crossed, best we can hope for. Thank you so much for presenting these 2 episodes. Beverly, thank you for jumping in unannounced without us announcing it to you. And just a reminder to everybody, there's still more questions that I think I would love to see answered, and some more comments in the chat. We have those messaging things available in the app. I hope you'll continue these conversations later on.
Thanks.
So thanks so much for being here. Thanks again, Carolyn. Thanks, Beverly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.